Hello, and welcome to the Design and Construction Requirements of the Fair Housing Act Technical Overview, Part 2. This training is approximately an hour and a half in length. Under the GoToWebinar platform, you will find several dashboard items. This includes the viewing screen. You will see at the top that it will state whose screen you are viewing and allow you to zoom in or screenshot the items you see on the screen. The webcam function should be disabled. The GoToWebinar dashboard and control panel. You can set up the dashboard to include the screen that is being shared and the GoToWebinar control panel, or you can move it to another window if you have multiple screens. The GoToWebinar control panel. The GoToWebinar control panel is where you will control your audio, review any attached handouts, and ask any questions. Today, we have 3 handouts in the handout section of the GoToWebinar control panel. These handouts include the Fair Housing Accessibility Guidelines, the Fair Housing Act Design Manual, and the Participant Workbook. GoToWebinar Knowledge Check questions. During the webinar, we will be conducting knowledge checks. The GoToWebinar platform calls these quick polls. When we launch the polls, they will automatically appear. To select your answer, click the circle next to the answer and hit submit at the bottom. GoToWebinar certificate. For attending at least 45 minutes of today's presentation, you will receive an attendance certificate. If you attend for less than 45 minutes, you will not receive an attendance certificate. The attendance certificate will be sent to you on Wednesday. If you take the final quiz, which will be available at the end of today's presentation, and pass the quiz, you will receive a passing certificate. The final quiz was in the reminder emails and will be in the email that comes to participants 2 hours after the end of the webinar. You may take the quiz anytime following this training, and passing certificates will immediately be issued for a score of 80% or higher. Agenda, topics, and learning objectives. Today's agenda includes an introduction, topics, and learning objectives to help you understand the design and construction requirements of the Fair Housing Act Technical Overview, Part 2. During this session, we will cover the following topics and learning objectives. Our terminal learning objective, or TLO, is to identify the design and construction guidance provided for requirements 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 within the Fair Housing Accessibility Guidelines and the Fair Housing Act Design Manual. Our topics and enabling learning objectives, or ELOs, are as follows. Topic 1, Fair Housing Act Overview. ELO, understand the history and protections of the Fair Housing Act. Topic 2, Requirement 3, Usable Doors. ELO, identify the technical specifications for usable doors. Topic 3, Requirement 4, accessible route into and through the covered unit. ELO, identify the technical specifications for an accessible route into and through a covered dwelling unit. Topic 4, Requirement 5, light switches, electrical outlets, thermostats, and other environmental controls in accessible locations. ELO, identify the technical specifications for covered controls in accessible locations. Topic 5, Requirement 6, reinforcing for the later installation of grab bars. ELO, identify the technical specifications for reinforcing bathroom walls for the later installation of grab bars. Topic 6, Requirement 7, usable kitchens. ELO, identify the technical specifications for usable kitchens. Topic 7, Requirement 7, usable bathrooms. ELO, identify the technical specifications for usable bathrooms. And then we will follow that with a live Q&A session. We will have our knowledge check review, and then we will close the training session, and you will be able to take the final quiz. This training relies on the provisions of the Fair Housing Act and its regulations, the Fair Housing Accessibility Guidelines, the American National Standards Institute, also known as ANSI, A-N-S-I, A117.1, 1986, and the FHA Design Manual for the guidance it provides about compliance with the technical design and construction requirements in the Act. Presenters. Today's presenters include Mr. Eric Contreras, Mr. Michael Dyson, and I am Crystal Nolan. Mr. Contreras has 20 years of experience performing accessibility consulting services, Americans with Disability Act or ADA compliance evaluations, implementation plan development, ADA corporate policy guidance and interpretation, and ADA compliance reviews. During the live Q&A, Mr. Contreras will answer your questions, which you can type in the questions pod. Mr. Dyson has several years of experience facilitating webinars, workshops, and live events, and looks forward to assisting with this training. And I am Crystal Nolan, and I have worked in education, media, and advocacy for over 20 years, and I am also pleased to assist with today's training. Technical support and questions. Today, technical support will be provided by Ms. Corey Nolan and Ms. Alexia Brown. Ms. Liz Dyson will organize your questions for the Q&A portion of today's presentation. The Fair Housing Accessibility First program provides a design and construction resource center, also known as the DCRC, which is staffed Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Eastern. The DCRC provides comprehensive and detailed instructions, helpful online web resources, and an information line for technical guidance and support. You can reach the DCRC toll-free at 888-341-7781. You can also reach the DCRC at fairhousingfirst@hud.gov. And so let's get right into topic 1. Fair Housing Act Overview and Protections. Fair Housing Act History. Title VIII of the Civil Rights Act of 1968 was enacted by Congress and outlawed public and private housing discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. Congress amended the coverage of the FHA in 1988 to also prohibit housing discrimination practices based on disability and familial status. Buyers and renters who have disabilities are protected, as well as households that include a person who has a disability and people who do not have a disability but are associated with people who have disabilities. Scan this QR code or visit HUD's website for more information about the protections and the types of dwellings covered by the FHA. FHA Safe Harbors. FHA protections help to ensure that the built environment of covered multifamily dwelling sites are inclusive, accessible, and visitable for people with disabilities. The design and construction requirements of the FHA allow architects, designers, and builders the flexibility to create a variety of multifamily covered dwellings that comply with the FHA. The FHA establishes no single accessibility standard. Building developers and other housing design professionals must choose a standard that provides a safe harbor for building projects. A safe harbor is a recognized objective standard that ensures compliance with the FHA's design and construction requirements if followed without deviation. HUD has approved 15 safe harbors. For a list of HUD-approved safe harbors, scan the QR code on your screen or visit the Frequently Asked Questions page on HUD's website. Seven accessibility requirements. The intent of the FHA is realized by the 7 requirements of the guidelines, which establish minimal levels of accessibility. These requirements apply to covered multifamily dwellings designed and constructed to be occupied for the first time after March 13, 1991. The guidelines, provide detailed technical design and construction specifications and explain the areas of multifamily developments with accessibility obligations. During the last training, Technical Overview Part 1, covered Requirement 1, accessible building entrance on an accessible route, and Requirement 2, accessible and usable public and common use areas. Today's overview focuses on requirements 3 through 7. This includes Requirement 3, usable doors, Requirement 4, accessible routes into and through the covered unit, Requirement 5, light switches, electrical outlets, thermostats, and other environmental controls in accessible locations. Requirement 6, reinforced walls in bathrooms for later installation of grab bars, and requirement 7, usable kitchens and bathrooms. That brings us to our first knowledge check, actually our first 2 knowledge checks. So Michael, I'm going to send it over to you.
Thanks, Crystal. For the first knowledge check, in 1988, Congress amended the coverage of the FHA to prohibit housing discrimination practices based on blank. First option, disability and familial status. Second option, ethnicity. And the third option, gender. So we'll go ahead and launch this poll. And again, this reads, in 1988, Congress amended the coverage of the FHA to prohibit housing discrimination practices based on blank. The first option, disability and familial status. Second option, ethnicity. And the third option, gender. All right, give a few more moments to get your answers in. All right, thank you so much. Go ahead and close this poll. And we're going to jump straight into our second knowledge check, which reads, HUD has approved blank safe harbors. The first option is 7. Second option is 10. The third option is 13. And the fourth option is 15. So let's go ahead and launch this poll. And again, this reads, HUD has approved blank safe harbors. First option is 7. Second option is 10. Third option is 13. And the fourth option is 15. All right, a few more seconds for folks to get their selections in. All right, go ahead and close this poll. Thank you so much. And back to you, Crystal, for the key takeaways.
Thank you, Michael. Topic 1, key takeaways. Title 8 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968 was enacted by Congress and outlawed public and private housing discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. Congress amended the coverage of the FHA in 1988 to also prohibit housing discrimination practices based on familial status and disability. A safe harbor is a recognized objective standard that ensures compliance with the FHA's design and construction requirements if followed without deviation. HUD has approved 15 safe harbors. The intent of the FHA is realized by the 7 requirements of the guidelines. Okay, and moving right along to topic 2. Requirement 3, usable doors. Requirement 3 specifies that all passage doors in covered buildings are wide enough to provide access for people who use wheelchairs. Usable doors include all passage doors within the covered dwelling unit, such as doors between rooms, doors into walk-in closets, and doors into utility and storage rooms or rooms that contain washers and dryers. This includes all secondary exterior doors at dwelling units that open onto private decks, balconies, and patios. Doors to small closets, such as linen closets, which typically have shelves within easy reach, are not covered. Also, access doors to small mechanical closets dedicated specifically to furnaces or water heaters are not covered. Accessible doors. The guidelines distinguish between doors within individual dwelling units and doors in public and common use areas. The exterior of the primary entrance doors to dwelling units face public areas and are considered accessible doors. They must be fully accessible and meet the applicable sections of ANSI 4.13 or a comparable standard. Features of accessible doors include, but are not limited to, a minimum of a 32-inch clear opening width. Maneuvering clearances depend on the direction of approach to the door. For example, a minimum of 18 inches beyond the latch side is required for a forward approach on the pull side of the door. Thresholds should be avoided or very low. Hardware should be used that does not require tight grasping or twisting. And no more than 5 pounds of force for interior doors and 8.5 pounds of force for exterior doors to operate. Nominal clear opening. The guidelines adopt the term nominal to distinguish door width in covered units from door width in public areas that must provide an actual 32-inch clear opening. Inside units, the 32-inch nominal door width allows builders and designers to use standard 34-inch wide doors, which provide slightly less than a 32-inch clear opening. And a nominal 32-inch clear opening is between 31 and 5/8 of an inch and 32 inches wide. Sliding glass doors. Many 6-foot wide sliding glass door units, when the 3-foot wide operable panel is fully open, do not provide a nominal 32-inch clear opening. Builders must review manufacturer's specifications before selecting a sliding door. Doorway depth. For the primary entrance door and within dwelling unit, the wall thickness of all cased openings must be no greater than 24 inches if the width of the doorway or passage is a minimum of 32 inches. Doorways with a depth that is greater than 24 inches must be widened to provide the 36-inch minimum clear width for an accessible route. And that is, now we are at knowledge check 3. Michael, I'm sending it back to you.
Thanks, Crystal. For the third knowledge check, a nominal clear opening for a usable door is between blank wide. The first option, 24 inches and 25 1/4 inch. The second option, 28 5/8 inch and 29 inches. And the third option, 31 5/8 inch and 32 inches. So go ahead and launch this poll. And again, this reads, a nominal clear opening for a usable door is between blank wide. First option, 24 inches and 25 1/4 inch. Second option, 28 5/8 inch and 29 inches. And the third option, 31 5/8 inch and 32 inches. All right, give folks a few more moments to get their selections in. All right, go ahead and close that poll. Thank you so much. And back to you, Crystal, for the key takeaways.
Thank you, Michael. Topic 2, key takeaways. Usable doors require a nominal 32-inch door width that measures between 31 5/8 of an inch and 32 inches wide. Many 6-foot wide sliding glass door units do not provide a 32-inch clear opening. For the primary entrance door and within dwelling units, the wall thickness of all cased openings must be no greater than 24 inches if the width of the doorway or passage is a minimum of 32 inches. Doorways with a depth greater than 24 inches must be widened to provide the 36-inch minimum clear width required for an accessible route. Now let's move into topic 3, requirement for accessible route into and through the covered unit. Accessible routes within covered dwelling units must comply with the specifications in requirement 4. The accessible route begins at the primary entrance door to a unit and continues through the dwelling unit onto decks, balconies, and patios. Within a covered dwelling unit, the accessible route must be 36 inches wide or wider. Where an accessible route passes through doors, the width may be reduced to a nominal 32 inches, which is between 31 and 5/8 of a quarter of an inch to 32 inches. Accessible routes and spaces. The accessible route must be sufficiently wide with no abrupt changes in level. This makes it possible for residents with disabilities and their guests with disabilities to use all rooms and spaces, including storage areas, safely. Under most circumstances, exterior balconies and patios that may be part of the dwelling unit must be on an accessible route. No matter how small or large the dwelling unit is, an accessible route must be provided into all spaces intended for passage. For instance, the primary entrance porch, kitchen, bathroom, walk-in closets, pantry, and hallways. Now let's talk about raised and sunken areas. The guidelines specify that a dwelling may have one area within a room that is either raised or sunken. It may not interrupt the accessible route through the unit. A bathroom or kitchen cannot be located in a raised or sunken area. A loft is permitted, and the loft must meet the same specifications as a raised or sunken area. But it is important to remember, a unit with a loft may not also have a sunken or raised area. Level changes within the unit. Small level changes within dwelling units that meet the following requirements are allowed: a 1/4 inch maximum vertical level change, a level change between a 1/4 inch and a 1/2 inch must be beveled at 1 to 2 or less. Level changes greater than a 1/2 inch must be sloped at 1 to 12 or less. A smooth transition between different areas is most usable. Level changes at primary entrance doors. At primary dwelling entrance doors, if the exterior landing is made of impervious material, such as concrete, brick, or stone construction, the landing may be no more than a 1/2 inch below the unit's floor. If the exterior landing is made of pervious material, such as wood, the interior and exterior floors must be flush. Level changes at secondary entrance doors. At a secondary entrance, if the landing is made of pervious material, it may only be a 1/2 inch or less below the level of the finished floor. If the landing is made of impervious material, it may drop a maximum of 4 inches below the level of the finished floor. Designers should be aware that such level changes may leave the deck, balcony, or patio inaccessible to persons with disabilities. Now, the next section of this topic is thresholds. Thresholds at primary and secondary entrance doors must, 1, be no higher than 3/4 of an inch above the finished floor. 2, be beveled at 1 to 2 or less. And 3, not exceed a 1/4 inch of vertical change. The illustration shows the maximum sloped condition for a threshold permitted at a primary entrance door. With an impervious landing on the exterior side, the maximum allowed drop is a 1/2 inch at the entrance landing, and the threshold height is 1 1/4 inch from the exterior landing. On the interior side, the maximum allowed height of the threshold is 3/4 of an inch above the finished floor. Now, this illustration shows the same 1/2 inch maximum level change at the exterior landing, but with a lower profile threshold. The lower profile is easier for people who use wheelchairs and other mobility aids to cross. On the interior and exterior sides, thresholds must be beveled at 1 to 2 or less. And that brings us to knowledge check 4. Michael?
Thanks, Crystal. For the fourth knowledge check, within a covered dwelling unit, the accessible route must be 36 inches wide or wider. First option is true, second option is false. Go ahead and launch this poll. And again, this reads, within a covered dwelling unit, the accessible route must be 36 inches wide or wider. First option is true, second option is false. All right, I'll give a few more moments to get your selections in. All right, go ahead and close this poll. Thank you so much. And back to you, Crystal, for the key takeaways.
Thank you again, Michael. Topic 3, key takeaways. Within a covered dwelling unit, the accessible route must be 36 inches wide or wider. Where accessible routes pass through doors, the width may be reduced to a nominal 32 inches. The guidelines specify that a dwelling may have one area within a room that is either raised or sunken. Small level changes within dwelling units are allowed. Depending on the exterior landing, level changes at primary and secondary entrances may or may not be allowed. Thresholds are permitted at primary and secondary exterior doors with height and slope limits. And that brings us to topic 4. Requirement 5, covered controls in accessible locations. Requirement 5 specifies that certain switches, outlets, and environmental controls are located in accessible locations. The type of switches, outlets, and environmental controls that must be placed in accessible locations are used by residents regularly. Thermostats and other heating, air conditioning, and ventilation controls are included. Ceiling fan controls are included. Electrically operated skylight controls are included. Light switches are included, and electrical outlets are included. Now let's talk about controls that are not covered. Controls, the following items are not covered under requirement 5. Controls on movable appliances, hoods over ranges, telephone jacks, circuit breaker panels, special use wall outlets for refrigerators, built-in microwave ovens, washing machines, clothes dryers, and electric range outlets. Height of room outlets. The guidelines specify that room outlets must be located so that all operable parts of the receptacles are 15 inches or greater above the finished floor. The lower receptacle of a duplex outlet must be at 15 inches or greater above the finished floor. Height of switches. The guidelines state that switches, thermostats, and other environmental controls must be mounted no higher than 48 inches above the finished floor. This height applies regardless of whether the position of a wheelchair can make a parallel or a forward approach. Control mounting height. The guidelines, the guidelines provide several allowable heights for controls depending on whether they are located over an obstruction and the type of approach. Although not required, compliance is greatly simplified by adopting a single height of a maximum of 44 inches above the finished floor. And that brings us to knowledge check 5. Michael, I'm going to send it back your way.
Thanks, Crystal. For the 5th knowledge check, compliance is greatly simplified by adopting a single control mounting height of a maximum of blank above the finished floor. First option, 15 inches. Second option, 54 inches. And the third option, 44 inches. So go ahead and launch this poll. And again, this reads, compliance is greatly simplified by adopting a single control mounting height of a maximum of blank above the finished floor. First option, 15 inches. Second option, 54 inches. And the third option, 44 inches. I'll give a few more moments to get your selections in. right, going to close this poll. Thank you so much. And back to you, Crystal, for the key takeaways.
Thank you, Michael. Topic 4, key takeaways. Switches, outlets, and controls that must be placed in accessible locations are used by residents regularly. The guidelines specify that room outlets must be located so that all operable parts of the receptacles are 15 inches or greater above the finished floor. The guidelines state that covered controls must be mounted no higher than 48 inches above the finished floor. Compliance is greatly simplified by adopting a single control mounting height of a maximum of 44 inches above the finished floor. Now that brings us to topic 5, requirement 6, reinforcing in walls for the later installation of grab bars. Requirement 6 specifies that reinforcing be installed in bathroom walls to allow for the future installation of grab bars around toilets, bathtubs, and shower stalls. The guidelines illustrate the minimum areas to be reinforced, but do not specify the materials or methods for reinforcing. Regardless of the material used, it must be sufficiently strong to allow for the later installation of grab bars. Although the minimum areas for reinforcement specified in the guidelines meet compliance, many standard grab bar lengths may not be able to be safely anchored within these limited reinforced areas. In public and common use restrooms and bathing facilities, grab bars must be installed at the time of construction. Reinforcing for bathtubs. The guidelines specify minimum lengths and locations for grab bar reinforcing around conventional bathtubs. The 24-inch and 48-inch reinforced areas specified for tubs in the guidelines should be enlarged to provide full support for mounting plates and horizontal grab bars. For the side walls, ANSI, A-N-S-I, A117.1, 1986, specifies that the lowest permissible position grab bar is 33 inches above the room's floor. For the back wall, the lowest allowed position for the grab bar is 9 inches above the tub's rim. Reinforcement in walls around bathtubs should accommodate these grab bar positions. Now, let's talk about reinforcing for showers. All shower stalls must have reinforced walls for the later installation of grab bars. Reinforcing in showers must be installed minimally between 32 inches and 38 inches above the floor. It is recommended that reinforcing for grab bars be enlarged so the bottom edge is 30 inches above the floor and extends the full width of both side walls and the back wall. In a shower stall that measures a nominal 36 inches by 36 inches, reinforcing is required, and it is strongly recommended that in addition, reinforcing for a transfer seat should be located on the wall opposite the controls and must run the full width of the stall, starting at the floor to a minimum height of 24 inches. For showers larger than 36 inches by 36 inches, reinforcing to support a wall-mounted shower seat is not required, but it is recommended. In Specification B bathrooms, when a shower is a nominal 36 inches by 36 inches, in addition to reinforcing for the grab bars, the shower stall must have reinforcing for a wall-mounted seat. Fiberglass tubs and shower units. Fiberglass tub and present special considerations because they frequently have molded elements along the back and the side walls that impede the installation of grab bars. For these reasons, fiberglass bathing and shower modules should be specified and provided with an integral reinforcing cast into the side walls in the factory at compliant locations. Reinforcing for toilets. The guidelines state that a minimum reinforcing area of 6 inches wide by 24 inches long should be provided behind and beside toilets. When the toilet is located against an adjacent side wall, reinforcing must be installed along the side of the toilet. Reinforcing around toilets in powder rooms is required when the powder room is the only toilet facility on the entry level of a multi-story dwelling unit in an elevator building. Wall-to-floor grab bars. In conventional bathrooms, where the toilet is between a lavatory and a bathtub, reinforcing must be provided for wall-to-floor mounted grab bars. The illustration shows areas that must be reinforced for a wall-to-floor mounted grab bar. Fold down grab bars. Wall reinforcing provided for installing a fold down grab bar is allowed. However, as shown in the illustration, these grab bars may necessitate larger reinforcing areas than conventional wall-mounted bars. It is recommended that reinforcing for all types of folding grab bars be strictly done as manufacturers recommend. And now we have reached knowledge check 6. Michael, back to you.
Thanks, Crystal. For the 6th knowledge check, the guidelines specify that a minimum sized blank long area of reinforcing be provided behind and beside toilets. First option, 3 inches wide by 12 inches. Second option, 6 inches wide by 24 inches. And the third option, 4 inches wide by 10 inches. So we'll go ahead and launch this poll. And again, this reads, the guidelines specify that a minimum sized blank long area of reinforcing be provided behind and beside toilets. The first option, 3 inches wide by 12 inches. Second option, 6 inches wide by 24 inches. And the third option, 4 inches wide by 10 inches. All right, we'll give folks a few more moments to get their selections in. All right, go ahead and close this poll. Thank you so much. And back to you, Crystal, for the key takeaways.
Thank you again, Michael. Topic 5, key takeaways. The 24-inch and 48-inch reinforced areas specified for tubs in the guidelines should be enlarged to provide full support for mounting plates and horizontal grab bars. Reinforcing in showers must be installed minimally between 32 and 38 inches above the floor. And it is recommended that reinforcing for grab bars be enlarged so the bottom edge is 30 inches above the floor and extends the full width of both side walls and the back wall. In specification B bathrooms, when a shower is a nominal 36 inches by 36 inches, in addition to the reinforcing for the grab bars, the shower stall must have reinforcing for a wall-mounted seat. Fiberglass tub and shower units present special considerations. The guidelines specify that a minimum of 6 inches wide by 24 inches long reinforcing be provided behind and beside toilets. Now let's move into topic 6, requirement 7, usable kitchens. The guidelines give a set of kitchen specifications that, when applied, provide a minimum level of accessibility. There are 3 general requirements in the guidelines to create usable kitchens. The first is a clear floor space of 30 inches by 48 inches at appliances. The second is clearance between countertops, appliances, and walls. And the third is turning and clearance requirements in U-shaped kitchens. Access to range, cooktop, or sink. Unless knee space is provided at ranges, cooktops, and kitchen sinks, a 30-inch by 48-inch clear floor space is required parallel to and centered on the fixture. Other appliances. At ovens, dishwashers, refrigerators, and trash compactors, the required 30 by 48-inch clear floor space area must be positioned for a parallel or forward approach centered on the appliance. 40-inch minimum clearance. A minimum clearance of 40 inches must be provided between all opposing cabinets, countertops, appliances, or walls. The handles of cabinets and appliances may overlap into the clearance area. If there's a cabinet without a countertop, such as a full-length pantry cabinet, clearance must be provided between the face of the cabinet and the opposing countertop, appliance, or wall. Now let's talk about turning circles in U-shaped kitchens. In U-shaped kitchens, where a sink, range, or cooktop is located at the base of the U, there must be a minimum 60-inch diameter maneuvering space to allow a person using a wheelchair or scooter to maneuver and make a parallel approach to the sink, range, or cooktop. Narrow U-shaped kitchens exception. As an exception, the guidelines permit U-shaped kitchens with a sink or cooktop at the base of the U with knee space or a removable cabinet to have at least 40 inches of clearance. And that brings us to knowledge check 7 and 8. Michael, back to you.
Thanks, Crystal. For the 7th knowledge check, at ovens, a 30-inch by 48-inch clear floor space area must be positioned for a parallel or forward approach centered on the appliance. First option is true, the second option is false. So go ahead and launch this poll. And again, this reads, at ovens, a 30-inch by 48-inch clear floor space area must be positioned for a parallel or forward approach centered on the appliance. The first option is true. Second option is false. All right, a few more moments to get your selections in. All right, go ahead and close this poll. Thank you so much. And we're actually going to go straight into our next knowledge check, which reads, there must be a minimum clearance of blank provided between all opposing cabinets, countertops, appliances, or walls. The first option, 40 inches. The second option, 50 inches. And the third option, 60 inches. So we'll go ahead and launch this poll as well. And again, this reads, there must be a minimum clearance of blank provided between all opposing cabinets, countertops, appliances, or walls. First option, 40 inches. Second option, 50 inches. And the third option, 60 inches. All right, give a few more moments to get your answers in for this one. All right, go ahead and close this poll. Thank you so much. And back to you, Crystal, for the key takeaways.
Thank you. Topic 6, key takeaways. The 3 general requirements in the guidelines to create usable kitchens are a clear floor space of 30 by 48 inches at appliances, clearance between countertop, appliances, and walls, and turning and clearance requirements in U-shaped kitchens. Unless knee space is provided at ranges, cooktops, and kitchen sinks, a 30 by 48-inch clear floor space is required parallel to and centered on the fixture. At ovens, dishwashers, refrigerators, and trash compactors, the required 30 by 48-inch clear floor space area must be positioned for a parallel or forward approach centered on the appliance. A minimum clearance of 40 inches must be provided between all opposing cabinets, countertops, appliances, or walls, and this does not include cabinet and appliance handles. In U-shaped kitchens with a sink, range, or cooktop at the base of the U, there must be a minimum 60-inch diameter maneuvering space unless it is narrow and knee space is provided. Okay, so now we are at topic 7, requirement 7, usable bathrooms. The guidelines provide specifications and design choices that, when properly applied, result in bathrooms that provide compliant levels of accessibility. The specifications provide for maneuvering space within the bathroom and minimum clearance requirements at the fixtures. Now let's define a bathroom. A bathroom is defined in the guidelines as containing a water closet, also known as a toilet, a lavatory, also known as a sink, and a bathtub or shower. The fixtures may occur in one room or be compartmentalized in separate adjacent spaces. When a bathroom consists of multiple compartments, each compartment with a fixture must be accessible and must meet the maneuvering and clear floor space requirements. There are 2 types of bathroom designs. To satisfy maneuvering, and clear floor space requirements, the guidelines provide two sets of specifications for designing bathrooms, Specification A and Specification B. The critical differences between Specification A and Specification B bathrooms are: Specification A bathrooms are less accessible. A distinguishing feature is that a toilet or a lavatory is permitted to be located within the clear floor space adjacent to the bathtub. Also, with the Specification A, all fixtures must be usable and meet clearance requirements. Now, with Specification B, there's more access. The key feature is a 30 by 48-inch clear floor space adjacent to the foot of the bathtub. Neither a lavatory-based cabinet nor a toilet is allowed to infringe on this clear floor space. It applies to only one bathroom, and only one of each fixture must be usable and meet clearance requirements with Specification B. The guidelines provide designers choices within limits on how to apply Specifications A and B to comply with the usable bathroom provisions in Requirement 7. Clear floor space outside the swing of the door. Specification A and B bathrooms must have a 30-inch by 48-inch clear floor space outside the door swing. Now, the door can swing in or out, that does not matter. In bathrooms with doors that swing out, all the required clear floor space at fixtures must still be provided. In bathrooms with doors that swing in, the door swing may overlap the clear floor space at fixtures, but must not overlap the required 30 by 48-inch clear floor space outside the swing of the door. Clear floor space centered on the lavatory. Lavatories in Specification A and B bathrooms must have a 30 by 48-inch clear floor space parallel to and centered on the lavatory basin. A forward approach to lavatories is also allowed. In such cases, a forward approach must be 30 by 48 inches with the 30-inch dimension centered on the lavatory basin. Knee space at the lavatory must be provided so a person using a wheelchair can make a close forward approach to reach the basin and the faucet. Clear floor space at toilets. Clear floor space at toilets is critical to allow people using wheelchairs or other mobility aids to approach the seat and make a safe transfer onto the toilet. The choice of clear floor space will depend on the overall bathroom design and the direction of approach to the toilet. Three options are: 1, a 48-inch by 66-inch for a forward and side approach, a 48-inch by 56-inch for a side approach, and a 60 by 56 fully accessible for a side or forward approach. Clear floor space at bathtubs. The guidelines require that one of 3 different clear floor space designs be provided at bathtubs. The diagrams on the screen show the clear floor space requirements for bathtubs. Numbers 1 and 2 apply to specification A, bathrooms, and diagram 3 applies to specification B, bathrooms. Clear floor space at showers. For showers, a clear floor space of 30 inches by 48 inches must be flush with and parallel to the control wall. In both specification A and B bathrooms, no other fixture may overlap the clear floor space at showers when the shower is only 36 inches long. However, if the shower is 42 inches long and a lavatory is mounted on the control wall beside the shower, it may overlap the clear floor space by 6 inches. The portion of the lavatory that overlaps the clear floor space must have knee space below or a removable vanity cabinet. For maneuvers and transfers, 36 inches of the stall entrance must always remain clear. These limitations ensure that if a wall-mounted transfer seat or a freestanding shower bench or stool is placed in the shower, there is sufficient space to make a transfer. Additional bathroom requirements. In addition to floor space requirements, bathrooms must also meet other requirements. Bathrooms must have usable doors, requirement 3, be on an accessible route, requirement 4, have outlets, switches, and controls in accessible locations, requirement 5, and have reinforcing for grab bars at toilets, bathtubs, and showers, requirement 6. Powder rooms. Powder rooms and half baths do not meet the definition of a bathroom since they do not have a bathtub or a shower and are not subject to requirement 6, reinforcing for grab bars, or requirement 7, usable bathrooms. However, powder rooms are subject to requirement 3, they must have usable doors. They are subject to requirement 4, must be on an accessible route within the unit, and requirement 5, the outlets, switches, and controls must be in accessible locations. However, when a powder room is the only toilet facility provided on the accessible level of a multi-story unit in an elevator building, it must comply with requirements 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. In the example shown, note there's 30 by 48 inches of clear floor space required outside the swing of the door. There is 30 by 48 inches of clear floor space provided parallel to and centered on the lavatory. And there's 48 inches by 56 inches of clear floor space required at the toilet for a side approach. And that brings us to our last two knowledge checks. Michael, I'm sending it over to you.
Thanks, Crystal. For the ninth knowledge check, bathrooms must have a blank, clear floor space outside the swing of the door. The first option, 25 inches by 45 inches. Second option, 28 inches by 46 inches. And the third option, 30 inches by 48 inches. So go ahead and launch this poll. And again, this reads, bathrooms must have a blank, clear floor space outside the swing of the door. First option, 25 inches by 45 inches. Second option, 28 inches by 46 inches. And the third option, 30 inches by 48 inches. All right, we'll give folks a few more moments to get their selections in. All right, go ahead and close this poll. Thank you so much. And now for the final knowledge check. For showers, a clear floor space of 30 inches by 48 inches must be flush with and parallel to the control wall. The first option is true. The second option is false. So let's launch this last poll. And again, this reads, for showers, clear floor space of 30 inches by 48 inches must be flush with and parallel to the control wall. First option is true, second option is false. All right, a few more moments to get your selections in. All right, go ahead and close this last poll. Thank you so much. And back to you, Crystal, for the key takeaways.
Thanks, Michael. Topic 7, key takeaways. Both specification A and B bathrooms must have a 30-inch by 48-inch clear floor space outside the swing of the door. Lavatories in specification A and B bathrooms must have a 30-inch by 48-inch clear floor space parallel to and centered on the lavatory basin or approach with the 30-inch dimension centered on the lavatory basin. The three options for clear floor space at toilets are 48 inches by 66 inches for a forward and side approach, 48 inches by 56 inches for a side approach, and 60 inches by 56 inches for a side or forward approach. The clear floor space requirements for specification A bathrooms at bathtubs are 30 by 60 inches and 48 by 60 inches. For specification B bathrooms, the clear floor space is required 30 by 48 inches adjacent to the foot of the bathtub. For showers, a clear floor space of 30 by 48 inches must be flush with and parallel to the control wall. Bathrooms must have usable doors, be on an accessible route, have controls in accessible locations, and have reinforcing for grab bars at toilets, bathtubs, and showers. Powder rooms and half baths are not bathrooms. However, they must have usable doors, be on an accessible route, and have controls in accessible locations. When a powder room is the only toilet facility provided on the accessible level of a multi-story unit in an elevator building, it must comply with requirements 3 through 7. And now we will move to the questions that have come in during today's training event. Let's see, our first question is from Nicole. And Nicole would like to know, in reference to the first question regarding applicability of the FHA to non-elevator buildings, if the ground floor units are only subject to the FHA design guidelines, are the units above still subject to the FHA as far as discrimination, gender, and etc., or factors that do not relate to housing?
Thank you for that, Crystal. So this question is in reference to a building that does not have elevators, and so only the ground floor units of the building are covered by the Fair Housing Act and have to comply with the design and construction requirements. However, the Fair Housing Act provisions for reasonable accommodation and reasonable modification apply to the entire site. The residents and units on the upper floors are still protected by the Fair Housing Act provisions, even if the units are not covered by the design and construction requirements.
Thank you for that answer. We have another question. This question is, can the faucet be offset from the center on a usable lavatory?
The Fair Housing Act does not impose requirements on the location of the lavatory controls, but it is necessary that the 30-inch by 48-inch clear floor space must be centered on the lavatory. A lavatory can be considered similar to a kitchen sink that may have multiple basins, but the clear floor space must still be centered on the overall fixture.
Thank you again for that answer, Eric. And I think we have time for one additional question. At kitchens, where the 40-inch minimum of clearance is required between work surfaces, in the presentation it noted that 40 inches minimum applies to the opposing walls. Are these considered work surfaces, or would the 36-inch accessible route clearance be required?
The Fair Housing Act guidelines require a clearance of at least 40 inches between all opposing base cabinets, countertops, appliances, and walls. The guidelines do not refer to work surfaces, but rather the 40-inch clearance is measured from any countertop or to the face of any appliance, excluding handles and controls that project into the kitchen, to the opposing cabinet, countertop, appliance, or wall.
And again, Eric, thank you for those answers. And I would like to thank the attendees for the questions. And at this time, I'm going to send it back to Michael, and he's going to review the knowledge check answers. Michael?
Thank you, Crystal. So Moving ahead with the knowledge check review. The first question, in 1988, Congress amended the coverage of the FHA to prohibit housing discrimination practices based on, and the correct answer was the first option, disability and familial status. And 95% of you got this one correct. Moving on to the second knowledge check. HUD has approved, the correct answer was the fourth option, 15 safe harbors. 88% of you got this one correct. Moving on to knowledge check 3. A nominal clear opening for a usable door is between, and the correct answer was the third option, 31 and 5/8 inches and 32 inches wide. And 98% of you got this one correct. Moving on to knowledge check 4. Within a covered dwelling unit, the accessible route must be 36 inches wide or wider. The correct answer was the first option. This is true. And 98% of you got this one correct as well. Moving on to the fifth question. Compliance is greatly simplified by adopting a single control mounting height of a maximum of, and the correct answer was the third option, 44 inches above the finished floor. And 85% of you got this one correct. Moving on to knowledge check 6. The guidelines specify that a minimum size, and the correct answer was the second option, 6 inches wide by 24 inches long area of reinforcing to be provided behind and beside toilets. And 90% of you got this one correct. Moving on to knowledge check 7. At ovens, a 30-inch by 48-inch clear floor space area must be positioned for a parallel or forward approach centered on the appliance. And the correct answer is the first option. This is true. And 84% of you got this one correct. Moving on to knowledge check 8. There must be a minimum clearance of, and the correct answer was the first option, 40 inches provided between all opposing cabinets, countertops, appliances, or walls. And 88% of you got this one correct. Moving on to knowledge check 9. Bathrooms must have a, and the correct answer was the third option, 30 inches by 48 inches clear floor space outside the swing of the door. And 100% of you got this one correct. Moving on to the final knowledge check. For showers, a clear floor space of 30 inches by 48 inches must be flush with and parallel to the control wall. And the correct answer for this was the first option. This is true. And 91% of you got this one correct. So good job on the knowledge check questions. I'll send it back to Crystal for the closing.
Thank you, Michael. Certificate. For attending at least 45 minutes of today's presentation, you will receive an attendance certificate. If you attended for less than 45 minutes, you will not receive an attendance certificate. The attendance certificate will be sent to you on Wednesday. If you do not receive the attendance certificate by Thursday morning, please check your junk or spam email. And if it's not there, email us at fairhousingfirst@hud.gov. If you take the final quiz and pass the quiz, you will receive a passing certificate. The final quiz will be in the email that comes to participants 2 hours after the end of the webinar. Quizzes may be taken anytime following this training event, and certificates of passing are automatically issued when a passing score of 80% is achieved. If you do not receive your passing certificate by Friday evening, please check your junk or spam email, and if it's not there, please email us at fairhousingfirst@hud.gov. Training evaluation. At the end of this training, there is a training event survey for you to complete. We appreciate your responses and support in improving our training products. Contacts. Please contact us with further questions via the DCRC by calling 888-341-7781. And that number is accessible by voice or teletypewriter, or feel free to email us at fairhousingfirst@hud.gov. You can also scan this QR code to add the DCRC's contact info to your telephone's address book. We would like to thank our presenters, technical support, ASL interpreters, and of course, you, the attendees. This screen will remain up for 20 seconds after the broadcast to allow you time to scan the QR code or screenshot the contact information on the screen. And again, we thank you for your attendance, and we hope you have a fantastic day.